This is the Cariorker podcast. My name is Todd Connor. I'm an actor, a screenwriter, and a storyteller, speaking to you right now from my little pod in New York City. Meanwhile, half a hemisphere away from here, far below the equator, there flows a certain river. It springs from the Tijuca National Forest above Rio de Janeiro. It flows down to the city and finally into the neighborhood of Cosme Velho, where it disappears below the ground and finally vanishes completely into the Atlantic Ocean. And we're going to flow backwards again, upstream into Cosme Velho in a minute. But first I want to tell you, this is the very river that gives the native-born citizens of Rio their name, the Cariorker. And so this one New Yorker from the old island of Manhattan will be taking a deep dive in my humble little pod into the past of the Cariorker. Not the river, the people, as we explore old Rio together through its fiction and sometimes its music. Oh, yes, Cosme Velho. Let's flow back upstream now into that neighborhood where the famous river disappears. There once appeared in that place, above ground, a Cariorker, in the form of a man who became a very famous writer. Maybe not to us, but that's what we might be seeking to change. He was a contemporary of Mark Twain, in fact. He was known as the Bruxo, the Sorcerer of Cosme Velho, Joaquim Maria Machado de Assis. Now, he wasn't a real sorcerer, even though he kind of sounds like one, or was he a wizard or a warlock, but we might still consider him a kind of a posthumous conjurer of a Rio that exists now only in the spirit of Portuguese letters, and the people too, of course. This first year of the Cariorker podcast is an invocation of that spirit, and I call it A Season with the Sorcerer. I don't want to say too much, and though I've created original translations for this podcast, I don't profess expertise to anything. I'm only an entertainer, a storyteller on holiday, a curious visitor in the city of Old Rio. I want to invite you along on my trip in this vehicle of storytelling just because, well, maybe it's just more fun to travel in a group. And the short stories of the Bruxo will be the folding map for our tour. Machado's most famous story, though, was probably his own. His life is a triumph in many ways over immense challenges, not least of which was his epilepsy. But in 1897, he founded and became first president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters, a little bit like Alexandre Dumas, one-quarter African, the grandson of slaves. He learned 5 foreign languages, including Latin and Greek. He was influenced deeply by Shakespeare, among other English writers, and was the first to translate The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Now finally this. A colleague of Machado once told him, after he had written a number of plays, that maybe his work was better read on the page than played aloud. Now, this might well have been true in those days. But as an actor, and a player, and now a podcaster, I feel it's high time we put that to a test. He might find himself at home right here in the pod. So please join me for A Season with the Sorcerer. Have a listen. Tell me what you think. If you like what you hear, drop into the Cariorker podcast store and make a purchase and show your support. Or make a tiny donation there on my PayPal link. Finally, listen, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for listening.